Welcome to this week's episode of Your Stock Request for the 22nd of June. Hi, I'm Michael Gable, Managing Director at Fairmont Equities. Your Stock Request is the weekly video where I take your request and analyse the share price charts. So this week we have NRW Holdings, QX Resources, Arafura Resources, Mader Group and INE. So if you have a request, please send it through. Make sure you've signed up to the free newsletter, but my best stock tips come out every Tuesday in the Dynamic Investor Report, so make sure you are subscribing to that report. But if you do enjoy these videos, we'd love you to share them on social media or even leave us a review. Our main business is in portfolio management, so if you have more than $500,000 to invest and you'd like to find out more, then please give me a call. And any advice here is general only. So NWH, as we could see over the past year, initially did pretty well up until early this year where there was a fairly sharp pullback, but it does look like it's found a low. So if we zoom in here, we can see the nice sort of bounce off this sort of 210 level. We could see crossing on the MACD, sort of buy signal with the RSI. So nice bounce. So it looks like it's formed a good low. At the moment it just seems to be basing. So a bit of sideways movement on next to no volume. Came back, also not really any volume on the way back, but a bit of volume coming in on the way up. So generally just basing. I think if you're looking for the next sort of move higher, you'd have to see it clear this sort of area of resistance here near 250, and then that'll be the signal for a bit more upside. Okay, QXR. So obviously, dominated by the big moves up and down. I mean, most recently, a year ago, we had that sort of massive move up on volume, but unfortunately it's, given it all back, which isn't a great sign. Ideally, it would have been better if it traded sideways. So it's come all the way back. Volumes were lower. I mean, that is a positive, but just looking at what it's doing here, you've got this sort of rally off the recent low in March, but it's sort of been pulling back again. So a couple of lower highs. So that, in other words, it's trying to rally, but the selling is still kicking in. So I think with something like this, you need to wait for the sort of big high volume reversal as a buy signal. But even then, you've got all these trapped sellers up here. So it'd be unusual for it to make a move like that. But that's basically what you have to look out for, because at the moment the risk is still to the downside. Okay, ARU. If we look back, I mean, there's been occasions where it's sort of rallied and had these sort of flat consolidations. But most recently, what we've got instead is a pullback that's come back fairly. It's a deep pullback instead of being a fairly flat pullback. So, looking at momentum in terms of the RSI, I mean, it has sort of bottomed out. So, the downside momentum is sort of flattening out, but there's no buy signal here. Again, you need to wait for some sort of high volume move to take out some of these previous little peaks. But even then, I think it might just be a short-term move. Because of the deep pullback, it probably needs to undergo a bit more of a base for a period of time before you can get some sort of reliable move higher. Okay, Mader. So clearly we've got an uptrend, which is good. But just looking at the recent pullback, it is sort of a bit sharp here, and then it's sort of struggled here to get back up to this sort of area closer to 550. May well find support here and bounce, but it's one that I'd continue to hold if I was holding it, because you've got the uptrend, and I'd be looking at this May low as the point where the uptrend is clearly over. So if it falls under this level, then the uptrend's over, but as long as it consolidates around here, there's still a good chance it can continue to head higher. Okay, in INR, so look, we've still got a big downtrend But just looking at what it's doing recently, we've got a nice sort of move up here on volume, and then a sort of a rounded out low. And then there was another sort of decent move, again, volume coming in. So, and then in the last few days, it's lower volumes as it consolidates. So, there seems to be a bit of a trend line here. That's where it's bouncing off. You could potentially say this is a buying opportunity, and you just run a really tight stop. And then if it takes out this high, you could add to it, or even just use that as your buy signal. But given the long-term downtrend, we're just talking sort of short-term moves. If it gets through 40 cents, maybe it can go a bit higher. So short-term, it looks like it can go higher, but longer-term, it's too early to say. Okay, well, that's all for this week. As always, if you have a request, send it through, and I'll try to cover it next Thursday.